Hello, for fuck's sake. Hello, welcome to Mondo Cinema. I'm here with Toby Amies. We're talking about his absolutely beautiful documentary feature, The Man Whose Mind Exploded. Hello, Toby.
You know I'm trying to make a film about you.
I didn't know.
Didn't you?
No.
Okay. Do you remember who I am?
No, not specifically.
Okay.
My recording machine doesn't work in my head. I can't remember even how old I am now. Never know if I'm 60 or 70.
What are you doing?
Getting out my nipples. There we are. There we are, there's one. Here we go, there we are. I've taken the rings out so I can play with them. The three words that sit in my second coma: trust, absolute, unconditional. I've got a big bullwhip, and I'd like someone to be tied up and bent over, and I'd like to put a candle up their arse, light the candle, and with my bullwhip whip the candle out. I've been through 2 nervous breakdowns, 2 attempted suicides and 2 comas. I'm in my 7th life now.
Alright, so here goes. So Toby, do you want to tell us like what the film's about, I suppose, first of all? Well, what is the film? What is The Man Whose Mind Exploded?
The Man Whose Mind Exploded is a film that details my relationship with the man whose mind exploded, whose name is Dracco Hazar, name he came up with himself. And it's just, I work as a portrait photographer on occasion, and I think when you take somebody's picture, you have a choice of either taking a picture of that person, having their picture taken, or you take a picture of your relationship with that person. And that's the way I like to approach it. And that's really what I made a film of, was I met Dracco and did some work with him on a silent film a long time ago, and then made a radio program about him. And then on the basis of that, people said, oh, you should make a film about it, and about him. And so I started to visit him and film, and didn't really have an idea of how the whole thing was going to be structured, but just wanted to record my relationship with him. And he was a very difficult person to have a relationship with, not because he's a bad person, but because he has his memory issues. He didn't really remember us, so there wasn't really anything to build on in terms of having a relationship, from his point of view anyway. I got to know more about him, but the relationship didn't move on from his point of view.
I've got a problem now, as I was just feeling about.
What's that?
My leg.
Your leg? Oh dear.
And I can't touch it, even so sore.
Oh dear, yes. Yes, that doesn't look healthy.
It is
How long's it been like that?
A week or so.
Really?
Yeah. And it's painful. Painful right to the bone.
Really?
Yeah.
Perhaps it's better if we go to emergency.
Okay.
So what was like the extent of your friendship? Because it must be. I mean, there are many scenes in the film where he's saying like, you know, where people are asking him, "Do you remember Toby?" And he's like, "No," or you know, I mean that must be very difficult because you seem very attached to him, and that kind of disconnect, as you say there, with him, where he's essentially, I mean, he doesn't seem to remember you from one scene to the next. That must have been very difficult.
It was very frustrating, and it was principally frustrating. There's a bit in the film where I give him this notice board for his birthday, and he's clearly just like disinterested in it and sort of annoyed. But it was my hope with that by writing notes to each other on this board, that we would then create an externalization of a relationship that was impossible between our two minds. But he just didn't do anything with it at all, because his world was, without him being unpleasant, it was a very selfish world that he lived in. You know, he'd kind of, through a combination, I think, of choice and circumstance, created an environment where he was the only person that he had to please. So he had impeccable manners, as you see in the film, but at the same time, the moment I left that flat, I ceased to exist. And I suppose that one of the broader themes or meanings for me in the film is that you ultimately have to accept people for who they are, you know, if you want to have a relationship with them. And what Dracco does by presenting such extreme forms of behaviour is that he forces you to, in the most pleasant way, but he forces you to broaden the horizon of what you're willing to accept in another person's behaviour. And I think that can only be a good thing. You know, that the point of The Man Whose Mind Exploded is not to say this very strange, weird, beautiful guy is just like all of us. The point of it is to say this very strange, beautiful guy lives life very differently to you, and he is as much a part of the human experience as you in your slightly more conservative way are. So it's not to reduce what he is, it's to increase our sense of what is possible.
Drac, I don't know what to say, because I think I don't understand why you wouldn't go and see the doctor when you've got something.
Forget that things didn't get better.
Yeah, but there's I mean, you touched on something there. I mean, there is an ethical issue as well, and it's part of the show.
There are no ethics in
No ethics in show business. There's a question though that you bring up at the end where you ask him if he's happy to, you know, to I think it's when he's pulling his nipples. That's scene.
Do you think it's fair for me to film stuff when I know that you've got brain damage?
Yes,
Why?
because I enjoy being used.
It was a question I asked of him consistently. I mean, it's you know, clearly we put it in the film at certain points where it was most acute, but almost every day that I went to see him, I would ask for his consent in one way or another, because even though it was clear that his motto, trust absolute unconditional, is this sort of sense of, you know, giving consent to the universe to be however it chooses to be, or however it is. And but at the same time, yeah, I was very aware of the moral implications.
So just to clarify, we're talking about the kind of consent of making the film. And
coming into his space and asking him questions, and
because he seems uncertain sometimes of what you're doing. I mean, he says like, "Are you writing a book? Or are you doing this? Are you doing that?" So I mean, how did it come about? Even I mean, how did the arrangement come about that you would film him? Or
well, it was a friend of mine said. A friend of mine had got a commission from the Arts Council to commission a film, a silent film, in conjunction with which his band would perform. And he had this story, and he said, we really should have Dracco as the star. And then so he and I went to see Dracco. And Dracco opened the door, and this guy David explained what we were doing, and Dracco said, come in. And that was what happened from there on in. Is Dracco just lets you in, knock on his door and say, can I come in? And he'll just say yes. You know, unless, you know, I've never seen him deny entry to anyone on that basis. So
It's just temporary, it's getting worse.
that's actually the other question I was going to ask about the space itself. I mean, that flat's absolutely incredible. I mean, it is literally like his mind has exploded.
Yes,
It's kind of sitting in you know, reams of memories and so on and so forth. I mean, what was it like stepping into that place for the first time?
It's really, well, the first time you step into it, and I hope we get a sense of that from the film. It was just, it's magical, but it's also, there's a sensory overload there, because the smell was really quite overpowering there.
I was going to ask you about the smell.
Wasn't entirely unpleasant, but it was a mixture of incense and perfume and old man and cat piss and there was always something else there that was very hard to pinpoint what exactly it was, but it was you know, it was very much a part of his character, but also it was very much a part of his character insofar as it was clear that he'd stopped smelling it. You know, so he was unaware of what it smelled like in there.
So I'll go and get my car, and we'll take you up to emergency and see if they can dress the wound. Blow this candle out. Do worry me with the candles. It's not like you've got any paper just hanging around in here, waiting to catch fire. Are the are the spectacles entirely necessary
Yes.
for a trip to accident and emergency?
I can take them off. May take people back a bit.
Well, yes, we're
Maybe
going there
take
for...
it back a bit.
Yes.
Back a bit.
The idea is to go there
Okay,
to get the...
Back a bit.
Back a bit. Have them take a back a bit.
Yeah, I mean, just going into that environment, both physically, because it was, you know, I was constantly bumping into things or like knocking things over and stuff, and it is, you know, it's an externalization of his mental process. So for him, I'm sure it was like having people digging around in his mind. You know, it was really difficult for him. And it was funny when that when his flat was cleared out, there was a sort of snake that you could see across the carpet, and you could see how limited his movement is, because it just got fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller. And so somebody pointed out that you could not have invented a more perfect combination of his two primary creative disciplines, and that was, he was an interior designer initially, and then he trained as a dancer. And that environment, if you look at it as a sort of an artwork of interior design, is unique and extraordinary. But also, in order to exist within that environment, you had to dance through it. You know, it wasn't straightforward. You had to constantly kind of twist and turn to make your way through it without pulling stuff down. So it was like this lovely combination of two of the things that he was best at.
So you're obviously in the film. I mean, you're obviously a very deeply felt presence the whole way through the film. But visually, I mean, you show up very rarely. The first time we see you is with your arse out in on the beach in Brighton. How did that come about?
What happens with that is it's basically, I wanted to, in the least exploitative way possible, show Dracco as he truly is, because those body tattoos that he has are really important. And he used to go to the nudist beach, so I thought that would be an appropriate place in which to film him, with his consent, clearly. And also, rather than getting anybody upset, I just thought it was most appropriate to... Thanks. I thought it was most appropriate to... it's a question of when in Rome, I suppose.
Yeah.
Take my glasses off.
I just want them to take you seriously.
Is that possible?
So what happens with the film now? I mean, it's done the rounds at various festivals, I believe.
It's still playing festivals. We've got the Cambridge Film Festival coming up, the Cork Film Festival coming up. It's in with a couple of exciting festivals in America we haven't heard back from yet. And then it is going to have a national cinematic release in the UK, courtesy of the kind people at Picture Houses. So it will be in the cinemas soon, and hopefully we're still waiting to find out what's going to happen with UK TV as well. So if that happens, that will happen in conjunction with the Picture House release.